Welcome to Breakfast Central. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. We're excited, so many stories to explore over the course of the next 2 hours. Remember, you can engage with us on social media as well at News Central TV. I am Olive Emodi.
And I am Osao Gilboa. Yes, welcome to Tuesday morning's edition of Breakfast Central. Be encouraged, as always, to be a part of our conversation. Simply tweet at News Central TV. Happy International Men's Day, the 19th of November, that is being celebrated today, and so it's we're of course sending our best wishes to men across Nigeria and across the world, wherever you might be watching us from. Happy International Men's Day.
Happy International Men's Day to you.
Merci beaucoup. And we hope that men will take this day and celebrate themselves. You know, not wait for anybody but celebrate them, but celebrate their wives as well.
Don't say men should take this day to celebrate. Say we men should take this day to celebrate ourselves.
Well, pretty much the same thing, you know. But I'm just saying, you know, everyone should at least give some attention to men today, including wives and kids and, you know, their fellow men. Everyone should celebrate men today. We're going to be x-raying some major stories in the news this morning. But before that, a quick conversation on the controversy that erupted yesterday when the former Minister for Sports, Sunday Dare, who of course is now aide to President Bola Tinubu, responded to the former President Olusegun Obasanjo. If you remember 2 days ago at Yale University, the former president had, you know, given a speech. He actually wasn't there, but he recorded a speech via video, and it was played at the university. In that speech, he criticized the current administration in, you know, one way or the other. Spoke about INEC and how its leadership needs, you know, a lot of reforms. How INEC itself needs to be reformed, and then spoke a little bit as well about the dangers of state capture, and, you know, described in his words, you know, what Nigeria is currently dealing with as signs of state capture, amongst many other things. In response, Sunday Dare, who's a current aide, a special advisor to the president, went on a really, really long and, you know, denigrating, insultive post.
You should quote
on
the
former
first line.
president.
You should quote the first line.
We'll probably have it on your screens.
Former President Obasanjo is a man with a tremendous capacity for mischief, and Nigerians know it. His journey along the path of hallucination has never been in doubt. I cringed when I saw the intro. So is his descent into muddling facts, forgetting that he ran a presidency on record as the most corrupt. His recent diatribe at Yale University lacks sincerity. It is actually laughable that Obasanjo's pretentiousness about fighting corruption is not cutting any eyes in the eyes of the general public. We all know what happened under his watch, and how up until the present moment, there has been no explanation as to how he wasted a whopping $16 billion in generating megawatts of darkness across the nation. But that is not even the issue.
I mean, so
it goes on,
no need to,
you know,
to read all of the speech. And I think, you know, everyone who has seen it, you know, has reacted to it. You know, and Sunday Dare, if he, of course, you know, I'm sure he posted this on X, you know, so I'm sure that he must have also seen the replies to it. 99% of those who responded or replied or quoted that tweet didn't agree with Sunday Dare. In fact, 99.9% of those who responded to it, because there are certain things that are no longer nobody you know wants to hear these things anymore, and one of them is critique of previous administrations, because the APC has had 9 years now in office. Those tales of $16 billion of, you know, power, and some of all those stories, those fairy tales that, you know, they've used to speak bad about the previous administrations are no longer what Nigerians want to hear. Nobody cares anymore, you know, about those types of stories. And if you look at the economic indices, you know, Nigerians will, I'm sure if you do a poll this morning on who you would rather have in Aso Rock,
many people would choose President Obasanjo.
Yes, you know, would say, you know, that
Olusegun Obasanjo.
Because his time as president,
interestingly,
his time as president, you know, saw Nigeria achieve significant economic growth. It saw Nigeria achieve significant growth in almost all sectors. I mean, you can criticize him, you know, for many other aspects. You can point to one thing here or the other and say, okay, yeah, you didn't do very well here, but Nigeria was much better, in that time than it is
hard,
today.
Really, to do a comparative analysis of the quality of life. It's as simple as calling the average Nigerian and asking them, for those who are grown up enough to recall what life was under the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, to say, you're earning power now. Yes, you might be earning more now, but do you feel like you're able to make more from your earning, right? Are you able to spend more in a way that makes sense? The argument that I've seen in a number of times is that the average person's earning capacity has reduced drastically under this administration. In fact, if you read through the quoted tweets, one of them was saying that at the end of the current administration, that he's going to talk about how his earning power was reduced from 10 to 2, how he had to fold up his business. So we are going through inexplicably hard times. That I don't think anyone can argue with that.
Yeah, earning power is only just one.
Yes, just one of them.
Of the things that we're talking about.
So that one is the one that the average Nigerian who doesn't want to talk about the economics and all the other technicalities.
Good thing that we've put this on screen this morning. These are undisputable facts about Nigeria's economic growth at the time that former President Obasanjo was in office, between 1999 and 2006 or 2007. Yar'Adua, of course, also achieved significant growth. The Goodluck Ebele Jonathan even pushed that growth further, in 2010. I mean, I'm guessing that those were also offshoots or gains from the Yar'Adua administration. But look at where the disaster started. Look at where Nigeria fell, and fell completely to the floor. Until now has still not been able to get up. We moved from a country that had a GDP of $574 billion in 2014 to slightly above $200 billion in 2024.
Look at in 2010.
Yes. So, these things, again, to a former minister, this minister we're speaking of, or former minister we're speaking about, served under arguably Nigeria's worst government in its history. There's never been any government as bad as former President Buhari's government. Obasanjo today is still respected across the world. In anywhere in the world that he sets foot, he's still highly respected. Since President Buhari left office, he hasn't left Daura on any significant international trip.
All right.
And it's not just respecting him, it is just stating the facts on the caliber of these people, the caliber of the former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the caliber globally. Exactly on what we currently have in office. So
beyond even saying, I can completely agree with all that you've said, but also language I think is very important. You can't criticize in a way that doesn't belittle or disrespect, because a number of the things that were said were borderline disrespectful. Is what a number of people would say, that even if you want to say you don't agree with him, you're trying to defend your principle, that's completely understandable. But the choice of language.
And the reason that is because what we find in Nigeria today, when we hear about these appointments, it's not appointments that are made because of an interest in change or an interest in developing the country. And that's why when people are appointed, you see them go to give Thanksgiving. You see them throwing parties, celebrating their appointments. And because of that, the loyalty that these people have to the current president, because of the institutional damage that has been done to Nigeria, and this is from the Buhari administration, the loyalty that they have is not to Nigeria. The loyalty that they have is to the president who appointed them. And I'm talking about every single person, almost every single person that has had one appointment or the other in the last decade in Nigeria. Their loyalty is to the person who appointed them, solely to the person who appointed them. And that's why you see this type of response from Sunday Diary. The response is not born out of some diplomatic way of simply responding to the former president to say, well, we understand what you're saying, and this is where we're going, and these are the things that are being done. You see that it comes with insults. You see that it comes, like it's a vile attack at the former president, because these persons, they feel that they need to show some type of sworn loyalty to the person who has given them life by appointing them into office. And that's why you see, if you remember, it happened in the Buhari administration as well. Femi Adesina and co, and those who worked under the former administration as spokespersons pretty much had the same approach. Every time Obasanjo spoke, they had pretty much the same approach towards addressing his concerns. Almost basically telling the former president to shut up.
Right.
You know, and that's really the core, and that's what you're talking about here, that you can respond to the former president. You can,
but you don't have
you
to
know,
be disrespectful.
it doesn't have to get to that level.
Is important. I mean,
because the former president hasn't said anything that is out of place. He hasn't said anything that almost every Nigerian doesn't agree with. If you're talking about state capture, or, you know, that INEC needs to be better, everybody agrees with that. So you can simply point out, you know, that, well, we understand the former president's point, but this is where we are, this is where we hope to be.
Right. So I wonder, I mean, back to, if you look, you know, in the comments as well, they kept referring to him that, is this, you know, an Omoluabi behavior? Is that how we are very big on culture? And yes, whilst it has the downsides in that when elders act a certain way, you know, you're not expected to call them out. But you can't call people out. You can disagree with them, but you can disagree with them in the most respectful manner. And with language, you know, it's important to us here. Referring to a former president of his caliber as a man with a tremendous capacity for mischief, and that Nigerians know it, and that he's been along the path of hallucination.
I don't want to give that any life, but I think it's important, you know, he spoke about power. When the Buhari administration came in, remember they promised 20,000 megawatts of electricity by the time they were done. Absolutely not 1 megawatt of electricity significantly has been added to what we had before in 9 years that they've been in office. There's not been any significant change in Nigeria's power generation or distribution in the time that they've been in office. And so they also need to look at their own scorecard before they, you know, go on and, you know, speak these vile words.
Funny enough, if you go and look at, you know, there was earlier in the year, even though right now, Adelabu's ministry is nothing to write home about, but he did make reference to former President Olusegun Obasanjo's 8 million power plant. You know, when he said $8 billion power plant,
and he says about 10 power plants
helping the power sector. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think we've said all that really needs to be said, but let us know what your thoughts are on Twitter, at News Central TV, on all social media platforms as well. Let us know if you agree with him regarding former President Olusegun Obasanjo's statement about Nigeria's economic situation. But that's not what we're talking about today. Let's share with you the conversations that we're going to be exploring this morning. Funso Doherty sues the federal government over Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. He joins us live in the studio to give us the details. NBA committee secures the release of 6 protesters in Maiduguri, and it's jubilation there. And away from that, Omni Retail launches 50th distribution franchise network. Congratulations on that. And the former aide to Atiku drums support for President Tinubu as SA. Well, that's not very surprising. We reviewed the newspaper front pages this morning and have you calling. All these and more on Breakfast Central.
And always bring you breakfast headlines. 4 people, including members of the Anambra State's vigilante operation, were killed on Monday when unidentified gunmen launched a deadly attack in Ukpo, Dunukofia local government area, and Abatete, Demili North local government area of Anambra State. Eyewitnesses reported that the assailants, suspected to be enforcing the Monday sit-at-home directive, stormed Abatete around 8:30 a.m., opening fire on residents. They then moved to the Ukpo roundabout, where they randomly fired at people, including vigilante operatives. The attackers also set ablaze several vehicles belonging to the vigilante group and fled the scene after the carnage. In the meantime, Special Advisor to President Bola Tinubu on Public Communication and Orientation, Sunday Diary, has asserted that Nigeria's democracy suffered significant setbacks during former President Olusegun Obasanjo's tenure. In a statement posted on his X account on Monday, Diary alleged that successive administrations have grappled with the challenges inherited from Obasanjo's government, adding that President Tinubu is making considerable strides in addressing these issues. He added that the former president owes Nigerians an apology for failing to establish the foundational infrastructure necessary for the nation's development. Now, following allegations of vote buying and selling during the recently concluded Ondo governorship poll, one election observation group has called on Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission to work with anti-graft and security agencies to enforce penalties for those found complicit in the act. The group, while presenting its final election observation report in Abuja, expressed concerns over recurring issues that have plagued the nation's electoral processes, including vote buying, violence during polls, and lack of access to polling units for persons with disabilities. And now, away from Nigeria, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has defended a police operation targeting hundreds of illegal miners trapped in an abandoned gold mine shaft in Stilfontein. The president maintains that the miners must vacate the site as authorities persist with efforts to remove them by cutting off access to food and water supplies. The operation, which has seen security forces stationed at the mine for weeks, has faced criticism over humanitarian concerns. Local residents have been barred from delivering essential supplies to the miners, heightening fears of starvation or fatalities on the ground. And also the news, Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, accused of widespread atrocities in the ongoing 19-month conflict with the army, have denied responsibility for violations and reiterated their commitment to peace. Addressing journalists in Nairobi, Kenya, the head of the RSF delegation, General Omar Hamdan Ahmed, refuted allegations of receiving weapons from the United Arab Emirates. He also accused Egypt of providing extensive support to the Sudanese army, including conducting airstrikes, a claim that Cairo has denied. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Let's head now back to Breakfast Central and get into our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbon.
Welcome back. The Citizens Liberty Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association has successfully secured the release of 6 out of 11 protesters arrested during the EndBadGovernance protests in Maiduguri. The Maiduguri High Court granted them bail, paving the way for their freedom. News Central's Umaru Kirawa has this report.
The EndBadGovernance protesters had been detained for over 4 months following their alleged demonstration against governance issues in Nigeria. The protesters reportedly displayed the Russian flag and continuously chanted Bamai, meaning we don't want. It was a day of freedom and jubilation for the families of the 6 individuals granted bail at Maiduguri High Court 10.
Godiya nake wa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ya kamu wannan lokacin. Ina godiya wa Allah ko muna godiya wa gwamnatin da mana wannan abuwa. Ai kwa TV ne da ake zanga-zanga wajen buzgarin.
The Citizens Liberty Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association praised the judiciary's commitment to upholding citizens' rights.
Both in his wisdom and the wisdom of the judge, we were able to secure the release of 6 out of the 11 defendants before the court. And the rulings for our bail applications is slated on the 3rd of December, which we are praying the court to grant the remaining 5 accused standing trial in bail so that they will face their trial. One of the disheartening things is this. We cannot continue this as a nation. We cannot keep people for more than 100 days in illegal detentions.
The committee also reiterated its commitment to providing legal support for those fighting for social justice across the country.
One of the defendants, who was unfortunately not released today, is supposed to start his exams in the university. Unfortunately, he has to miss these exams. I called on the governor of Borno State, as a father, as a leader of all of us, to temper justice with mercy, use his commissioner for justice, invoke section 211 of the Constitution, so that this matter in the next adjourning days should be discontinued.
In the meantime, the families of the remaining 5 detainees await the next hearing scheduled for 3rd December 2024, as the case has been adjourned by the judge at Maiduguri High Court 10. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Wow, interesting report there. Thanking, well done, Umar Kirawa. He'll be joining us shortly. But let's share with you that in an extraordinary turn of events, a 42-year-old nurse, Alice Loksha, has escaped from Boko Haram captivity after 6 long years. Abducted in 2018 while working at a UNICEF office in Kalabalge, Borno State, and forced into 2 marriages. Alice was subjected to unimaginable trauma before escaping from the Dogon Chuku camp on October 24, 2024, alongside another abducted woman, Faina Ali, captured by Boko Haram insurgents in 2020 while traveling from Kaduna to process her late brother's death benefits. Joining us this morning to talk more on this is News Central's correspondent, Umar Kirawa. Good morning, Umar. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good morning.
This is both, I mean, it's bittersweet feelings. Bitter because it's very heart-wrenching to imagine the trauma she must be going through, but sweet because we are excited that she's finally gained freedom. But tell us, how much you know about the story so far.
Yes, the good side of the story is that they are back, and they are back alongside with 2 other persons. One is a woman and her child. She gave birth with the insurgents, which is unfortunate. It could possibly be something else, which I don't want to mention on television. But she was rescued or released after her husband was murdered during a fight between the Nigerian army and the insurgents. And afterwards, she brought her way out of the Sambisa forest, that is Alice, and then she joined the military. Later on, the military took care of her, gave her food, clothing, and including medical care. And then later on, she was released and handed over to the Borno State government for further rehabilitation and then subsequent reunion and reintegration back to the society, and then meet up with her family and possibly continue with her life. But surely it was a very painful, very difficult time for her. However, she was able to go through the pains. She was able to overcome the painful time. She told us that it was never easy. She has never expected coming out of the dens of the terrorists, but it was the will of God. That is what she said. And the prayers of all. That is what saved her and kept her alive. And the experience over there with the terrorists is something that she will never wish for her worst enemy. And that is to tell you how the unfortunate retrogressive activities of insurgents is instilling fear, is instilling difficulty and drawing us back to the dark days, which hopefully these things will be over, because Borno and other communities in the Lake Chad are recovering from the shackles of the insurgency. Yes, there are some problems, there are some issues, particularly within the Chad and other communities in the fishing areas. But surely Borno is recovering and peace is gradually gaining back with full force, because it's in recent times we've not heard of attack, we've not heard of massive killings of civilians and so on and so forth. So it's a plus and kudos to the Nigerian military, and of course
quickly,
to the government for providing the environment.
Yeah, quickly, I mean, being in captivity since 2018 or 2020, is heart-wrenching. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. And of course, losing, her husband as well. But are there others like her that are still in captivity, who have been there pretty much, the same time frame or even longer, that are still waiting to be rescued?
Yes, so many of them. In fact, there is no official figure of the number of persons in captivity. There's no official figure of persons who have been murdered by this terrorist group. The hope and prayers is that the people in captivity will be rescued. And for the story of Alice, she was kidnapped alongside others, including somebody, I think, working with the ICRC and others. And so, though there is no available record of persons who have been kidnapped or taken to the bush by the insurgents, but the hope and prayers of many is that the insurgency will come to an end very soon, and everybody will regain his own freedom, and life continues as normal.
All right. Markira, thank you very much for following the story. We wish her the absolute best. I hope that she is able to recover mentally and emotionally and, physically in every way. And of course, those who are in captivity, we of course will continue to encourage the Nigerian security agencies to, rescue these ones. Thanks for your time. We'll speak with you again.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Right. Now, we get into another major conversation right after this very short break. Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. PDP member and, of course, a former governorship candidate, Funso Doherty, has taken the federal government, the Bureau of Public Procurement, BPP, and the high-tech construction company to court over the ongoing Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Doherty, who had earlier served pre-action notices to the parties, argued that the award of the project violated the Public Procurement Act and the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, posing severe risk to life, property, and the region's economic and political stability, and seeks the courts, or rather a court order, to nullify the award of the project to high-tech construction and an injunction to halt further construction until full compliance with the Public Procurement Act and the Environmental Impact Assessment Act is ensured.
We're joined this morning by former gubernatorial candidate at the last elections and a member of the People's Democratic Party, Funso Doherty, to discuss this fight for fairness, transparency, and justice. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. So talk to us. I mean, this was a story that it was a big deal sometime earlier in the year, especially with regards to how it impacted a lot of businesses.
Yes.
But it just seems that in the past few months, we haven't heard much about this until now you're bringing it up. So talk to us about, some of the facts. We're seeing here the allegations, the questionable expenditures from what has been pointed out, 40 billion naira awarded for a blue line operator that's not yet been named. We're seeing here 218 billion naira awarded for phase 2 of the blue line project, when phase 1 is yet to begin entire operation. So give us, first of all, why it's important to you that you're doing this, and then maybe you can walk us through some of the details that stand out for you as illegal.
Okay, specifically about the action we've brought against the federal government, the BPP, Bureau of Public Procurement, the government through the Ministry of Environment, and high-tech on the coastal road, is an action we started much earlier in the year. As you said, this was an issue that arose earlier in the year, but you have to serve pre-action notices, you have to give them an opportunity to give you information and so on before the court action commences. And that's the process we've been going through, and there's just a process, and that's why we're just here today commencing the court action, or yesterday commencing the court action. Frankly, there are 3 issues that we have with this project. And it's really about the process for awarding the project rather than the project itself. You can debate whether or not the project is economically the best thing to do at this time. But whatever position you take on that, the process must be challenged, because this is a multi-trillion naira project. The 100 kilometers that is being built within Lagos is over 2 trillion naira for 100 kilometers of road within Lagos. That is more than the budget, Lagos State's entire budget for the full year 2024. This was done without any competitive bidding. It was awarded on a single source basis to a contractor, high-tech construction, who has been indicated to be owned by an affiliate of the present government. And we think that this lacks complete transparency. It is illegal because there are laws that prevent that. The Public Procurement Act is exactly in place to prevent such activity. And we believe that government must comply with its laws, and we must hold government accountable to those laws. There's also the question of the environmental impact assessment, which, again, there is a law that requires it be done and be published so that we know what is the environmental impact of this coastal development in a city like Lagos, which is a low-lying city and which experiences flooding problems. We're not saying don't do it, but do the studies that you need to do. Publish them as the law requires, so we know that you've taken account of all the things you need to take account of. I'll just make 2 more points. First is that government and Nigeria is not even in a position to take such a cavalier approach to expenditure. The federal government in the first 6 months of this year has a budget deficit of about 4 trillion, which means that we are borrowing a lot of money to fund our expenditure. Even if you are a household, it is not at a time when you are cash-strapped that you will be spending money without thinking about what is the most efficient way of spending it. So you don't award a project that is multi-trillion just to a single person without competitive bidding, in a situation where you are broke, basically, because Nigeria is broke. Finally, I think that at the end of the day, we, citizens, including those of us who are politically active, have a responsibility to play the role that we are playing, which is to say, this is wrong. We need to hold them accountable. We need to ensure that the checks and balances, the safeguards that are in place to prevent impunity are enforced.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, when the, whole controversy surrounding this project started, the Minister for Works, David Umahi, was questioned, by, another journalist, and he said back then that they did, the environmental impact, assessment, process. They went through the process, and the documents were available. He still failed to, to release those documents. So, are we then saying that he maybe wasn't being honest when he made that claim back then? And many people would argue that it's not necessarily out of character, for the Nigerian government to, award projects this way. But what have you really found, from your own investigations concerning the Public Procurement Act, and how this contract was awarded? Because it's a staggering amount of money.
It is a staggering amount of money. A couple of things in what you've said. First is that, they, by their own admission, so they do not contest the fact that there was no competitive bidding. They admit that it was awarded on a single source basis. Their contention is that they're allowed to do that. Our contention is that there are only very specific circumstances in which you can do direct procurement, which are provided for in the Act, and this project falls under none of them. And so the court will determine that, and that's one of the things that's before the court. So this is an important case from that perspective. You have to realize that if you do a law that says you must do bidding for contracts, and then you give the right to people to determine when they are going to use that bidding, it's almost the same as not having a law. So that is not the provision of the law. And we believe the court will determine that. Secondly, on the issue of the Environmental Impact Assessment Act and whether it was done. In the first place, the law requires not just that it is done, but that it is published, and you take comments, and you address those comments before you commence the project. So whether it was done or not is just one side of the thing. But even if it were done, where is it? Till today, we have not seen. I also have very strong reasons to question the comments that were made by the minister at that time, because I attended personally something they called a scoping workshop to plan for an environmental impact assessment act, environmental impact assessment, which was to be done for the coastal road. Yeah. And at the time the contract was being awarded, that scoping workshop was just being held. So how do you hold a scoping workshop to plan an environmental impact assessment, and then you say you've done an environmental impact assessment? The two things are inconsistent. And I personally attended that session in Lagos here. So I think that, the truth of the matter is that when you say it's not out of character, you're right. It's not out of character, but it should be out of character. That should not be the character of government. And if we do not stand and insist, right, these are the kinds of These are the kind of landmark situations, right? These are the kind of benchmark contracts, 2.2 trillion, just for 100 kilometers within Lagos, awarded directly on a single source basis to a single contractor. These are the things we must stand against and say, no, let's do it the way the law requires it to be done. If at the end of that process, the same contractor comes out victorious, fine.
And I mean, are you also strongly contesting the figures that have been stated for the contract? Because yes, 2 trillion naira for 100 kilometers, doesn't sound real.
Look, it sounds like a lot of money to me, but again, I will not make a judgment on that because I'm not a quantity surveyor. But part of the reason why you have the Public Procurement Act is just so that the process itself ensures that you are getting value for money. If you don't undertake that process, then there's no way you can say that we are getting value for money. You can't. If this is New Central, I'm sure if New Central is going to award a big contract, you will probably invite contractors, you will get quotes, and at the end of the day, you will choose somebody, right? And that's what any responsible large organization would do for a contract of any meaningful size. Talk less of a contract that is 2.2 trillion naira, which is half of your budget deficit for the first 6 months of the year, and a substantial portion of your overall federal government budget for 2024.
Okay, you've stated some of your expectations regarding this case. I think the question would be if you have faith that this court proceeding, especially now that the judiciary has been in the spotlight in the past few weeks, months, or I dare say years, do you have faith that the judiciary, that is meant to be the last hope of the common man, will be able to resolve this in favor of your expectations? Well,
we must always have faith. We must never lose faith. And I think that if we lose faith, that's the first step to sort of a continued situation that we don't want. So we must always challenge. And I am confident, actually, that we have a strong case because the facts are clear and they are before the court. The process we are going through is an originating summons. It's not one that will take a very long time to determine. So we have a date actually for the hearing now in January. We already have a date for the hearing. And once we have the hearing, then we just adjourn for judgment of the court. So I think that I am quite positive that, and because the facts of this case are in the public domain, right? I think we stand a strong chance. I just want to also make the point that this is especially important, and you ask me why. Remember that this is a time when the people, the average person, is being asked to make unbelievable sacrifices. They have seen their cost of living skyrocket and go through the roof. People have seen the cost of petrol go from 100 and something to 1,000, right? Everybody's experiencing the cost of living issue that we're having. And the reason why we have these issues is because of profligate government spending in the past. That is why people are going through this issue now. And so in a time when people are in crunch, to continue with this kind of action, this kind of behavior in government, I think is unconscionable. And I think it must be challenged.
There is a few people who, might also mention, that, maybe yourself or your party, doesn't have the moral standing to challenge some of these things, being done by the current administration, because the PDP government in the time, and of course maybe even across states, still has moments where they award contracts to their friends and to their cronies. I mean, you mentioned the relationship between high tech and Mr. President, as maybe one of the factors that must be considered here. So, I mean, would that be a fair criticism, to throw at the PDP and yourself?
Well, certainly, no one can question my moral standing to make these assertions, and if they can, they should come out and make it, right? I am the one sitting here. I'm not sending a proxy, right? So that's number one. Number two, whether you say PDP has been in government before or not been in, PDP is not in government. There's somebody who is in government, who is taking these actions. So it's not, you can't say because PDP once ruled or what have you, that people cannot complain about things that is wrong. No. We will complain about things that is wrong. We will complain about things that are wrong. It's our prerogative to do so. And in fact, it is our responsibility to do so. Remember that if you want to talk about PDP, APC has been in power since 2015.
Yeah.
This is 2024, almost 10 years. So referring anything back 10 years does not even hold water at all. And if you look at, actually, if you go and look at all the metrics, right, whether it's cost of living, whether it's GDP, whether it's our economic standing, whether it is GDP per capita, even if you take it to the basic quality of life that people are living, and ask them 10 years ago when APC came, and today, they should compare and contrast. If you ask 10 people, I'm sure you get 9 answers that they are worse off today than they were 10 years ago. So let's not even politicize it. This is a basic issue. There's a government in power. There are laws. The government, by its actions, appears to be acting in disregard of those laws. And this action can have severe economic impacts, including dire impacts on the people who are going through unprecedented hardship. And we must stand against that.
All right. Let's come back now to still talk about, the minister. In this case, let's talk about Minister of Works, Senator David Umahi. The chairman of the House of Representatives Federal Road Maintenance Agency, Remi Oseni, had criticized the minister, saying that he had no plan for the nation, saying that, he had misplaced priority over the state of roads. And one would, argue that the coastal highway had been a major part of his, or a highlight of his term in office so far. So how would you rate his performance? Would you say that he's first of all a right fit for the job, and are you impressed by his performance so far?
So I don't have full picture of everything concerning his administration, and I'm sure those he reports to would have that, and I hope they are doing their assessment. I must tell you that it is very difficult for me, if I were going to rate him, to give him a pass mark, or even anything approaching a pass mark, on the strength of this coastal road issue alone. Because fundamentally, I think that this is something that is, it's if you think about the scale of this project, right, in relation to what government is doing in other areas, this is such a massive thing, right? And to undertake the kind of process that you've undertaken, right, just shows to me personally, my personal view is that it shows a high sense of irresponsibility and a high sense of disregard for the rule of law, and a sort of an imperious approach to the Nigerian people. And it's one of these things where government is acting almost like, like a king. And we're not in a situation where we're operating a monarchy. We're operating a democracy. Leaders should understand that they are there to serve the public interest, to work for the people. They must obey the rules that government itself sets, right? And they must be seen to be, in all their actions, putting the interests of the people first. I must say that in my own view, it is clear that the interests of the people were not put first in this assignment. And as the principal person who is responsible for this engagement, for this particular project, he has to take responsibility.
The 2020, Dave Umahi says that the first phase of the project will be completed by May 2025, so, it depends on what the court rules, if they would stop work or not. But the 2025 budget, it came into conversation a couple of days ago. There's likely going to be about 10 trillion, deficit, again. Would you have suggested a different use of our money? If we're going to spend 15 trillion, if you were, meant to spend 15 trillion, or, as president, where would you rather have directed those funds to? And the 2025 budget, if you look at, those details, it doesn't still seem, I've seen a few people who ask about the budget implementation for 2024 first, and know where we are, because it doesn't seem like that budget has really impacted on the lives of Nigerians, and before we're talking about 2025. But we're getting into more debt, as it seems. We have a higher budget deficit. Where would you rather have directed 15 trillion?
So, on some level, it's easy to be an armchair sort of driver. But I think that when you're in the kind of situation in which we are, you have to prioritize. And it is difficult for me to see why 15 trillion coastal highway is a priority in the kind of economic situation in which we are. That's not to say that it may not have economic benefits. That's not what we're saying. But you have to, when you are faced with this situation, you have to think about what are your priorities and how do you prioritize. And we should be prioritizing the things that will create a broad-based prosperity. So things that will create broad-based ability of people to have jobs.
You don't think a road will do that? Connecting, these two regions?
You see, a road may do that, right? But there are roads across the entire country that are in terrible shape. There are communities that are separated. There are many communities that are separated from one another in this country, right? So you ask yourself, it's all about priorities. So if now we're going to spend 2.2 trillion on 100 kilometers of road in a stretch within Lagos, right? How could that money have been better spent, right? To empower directly, right, the ability of people to generate their own incomes.
Yeah.
It's not to say that that road is not a good thing. It may be a good thing. I don't have a fundamental problem with the road. But if you had to prioritize, and this is why you have government, if you had to prioritize, I'm not sure that is in the situation in which we are. 15 trillion for a coastal road from here to Calabar.
Yeah, so what would you rather that we're spending that type of money on?
I would rather, for example, that we think about things like education, think about things like empowering people with skills, our technical education across the country, for example. If we are in a position to improve healthcare, right, investing in these areas, which boost human capital, because it is human capital that generates wealth. In any broad-based society, where you generate wealth that is broad-based, that the people can benefit from, it is investments in the people themselves that bring those things out, right? If you also look at the state of our roads, even if you said you wanted to use it for roads, if you look at the state of our roads across the country, there's an existing infrastructure. How are we maintaining that existing infrastructure across the country before spending 15 trillion to build one road?
Speaking about, the roads that currently exist, and there are many people who would argue that, we see videos every day of people posting about potholes, broken roads, but is it argument enough that not all these roads are federal roads, that these roads are in some states, and these states have governors, and the governors, they have commissioners as well? Will that be excuse enough?
Well, I don't think that this is not either or, right? So yes, we know that some roads are state roads and some roads are federal roads. Are all the federal roads good? Are all the federal roads good? They're not, right? So, and this actually is not even about whether it's less about whether the coastal road or not the coastal road. But if you as a government, with your executive council and all of that, sit down together and say, okay, we've looked at everything. We believe a coastal road is the best thing, right? You are the government. We won't quarrel with you. People have elected you to make those decisions, right? That's fine. That's the decision you've made. Time will tell whether that's the right decision. But in executing that contract, you must comply with the law. That is what this is about. In executing that contract, you must comply with the law. Don't just take 2.2 trillion naira of our money and say, Mr. Contractor X, who is an affiliate, come and do it. We won't ask you to compete with somebody else to give us a better price or whatever. Just go and do it. That is what we are quarreling with.
Yeah. I also want you to speak, away from the project. Apologies, Olive. Away from the project now. I'm sure that we definitely will be following up with the court case and see where it leads. But I want you to speak on Lagos.
Yes.
In the past, you've run, to be governor of Lagos State.
Yes.
There are expectations from people that you will once again run.
Yes.
Under your new party. So
yes.
I don't know if it's too early to ask, but if you can confirm that you will or you plan running under the PDP for governor of Lagos State, what will be the key points that you can point to that Lagos is currently being maybe mismanaged by the current governorship in Lagos? Former President Obasanjo also, if you remember, or if you've seen in the last couple of days, he's been attacked by Sunday Dare and a few others for speaking about state capture and a couple of other things. I'm sure he wasn't just talking about federal. But what are the things that you would point to about Lagos that you can clearly see being done wrong?
I think that the thing with Lagos is that our greatest, some of the things that they point to as our greatest challenges are in fact our greatest opportunities. So the population in Lagos and the young population in Lagos, for example, I think is the engine, and that's what's going to drive the wealth of Lagos going forward. So I think that a lot more needs to be done in terms of capacitating those youth, right, to become productive drivers within the economy. One of the things that we need a lot more of is technical education, for example. I think we need a lot more of technical education. Formal education, formal academic education is fine, and I'm not saying we should emphasize that, but a lot more emphasis, a lot more expenditure has to go into technical education, right? I think that in the same vein, I think a lot more could be done in the healthcare area, right? In terms of providing primary healthcare that is qualitative, that the people will opt for. Very often, people don't want to go to government hospitals because they don't believe that the care that they will get there is good care. So you see them actually going to like traditional practitioners. You see them going to all sorts of places. And it's not about building hospitals. It's just about ensuring that people get a good quality of primary health care, right? When they visit a facility. Things like, for example, in transportation, for example, I think transportation, for school kids should be free.
For both the private schools
for children in school.
So is it the private schools or the government schools?
Any children of school age should be able to benefit from free transportation to and from school, right? Healthcare for children should be free. Education free to secondary
Can Lagos afford this?
Well, you see, if you think about how Lagos is managing its expenditures, that is another area which I have highlighted in the past. If you recall the work that we did on government expenditures, right? If you do not spend money efficiently, that money will never be enough. But if you spend it efficiently, you will get the benefit and the value for it, right? If you take primary health care for children, and you say anywhere in the world, if you do health insurance, the premiums for children is always very small. And why is that? Because it's not the children generally that fall ill, right? It is older people that experience health challenges. So you'll be amazed to find that if you did free primary health care for children up to a certain age, maybe 16, maybe 18, the cost of such a program is not going to be tremendous.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The cost of such a program is not going to be tremendous, but the benefits will be tremendous, right? So these are some of the things that we can divert money that is being spent inefficiently, putting up structures where we know that government expenditure, maybe for every 10 naira of government expenditure, who knows what amount of value we get, right? These are things that you can invest in
And if you were to run, will all this be in your manifesto?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I don't know, I may have missed if you answered this. Are you still going to run under the PDP?
Well, I'm in the PDP now, and I see no reason why I should not pursue that path. And so I have every intention to. Ultimately, the decision will be made by the party as to who represents the party. But personally, I see no reason why I should not, because the things that I believe we can do to move Lagos to become a city of the future.
And PDP has that influence in Lagos to, take over Lagos?
Time will tell. 2027 is around the corner. But clearly, the people are in a place of pain. And, you can't keep telling people who are in a place of pain that they should be patient. Lagos has been run by APC for almost a generation. It's almost 30 years. Okay? So, and nations have moved from third world to first world in the course of a generation. So I think it is time.
It's not just the APCs who, people would say have run Lagos. It's also certain persons. How do you plan, uprooting that system, from Lagos? Because I remember you mentioned, the possible relationship between the owners of high-tech and Mr. President. You can't ignore, some of those factors in Lagos.
Yeah, and those factors remain, and there will be challenges, but also, those are the things that we have to take on. I think that when the people decide, you cannot stop the people. When the people decide, they will make their mandate felt.
All right. Funso Doherty, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, maybe in another couple of years, we'll be introducing you as the People's Democratic Party gubernatorial candidate for Lagos State. Until then, fingers crossed.
Thank you.
And that's all that we have for now. Let's take you through some of the conversations we've had this morning and share with you what's coming up next. Funso Doherty sues the federal government over Lagos-Calabar coastal highways, the conversation that we have just concluded. And earlier on, we had NBA committee secures release of 6 protesters in Maiduguri. Umar Kirawa brought us that report and also joined us to speak about the UNICEF nurse that had escaped Boko Haram captivity after 6 years. Now let's share with you what's coming up next.
Coming up next, former aide to Atiku drums support for President Tinubu as a special advisor. The newspaper front pages as well coming your way. And also, Omni Retail launches 50th distribution franchise network. Welcome back, and now let's get into the newspapers. And to review these stories, we have the publisher of the Nation newspaper, Ikechukwu Amechi, joining us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Also, good morning. Always my pleasure. Olive, I didn't see you last week. Where did you go to?
Well, the State of the Nation required that I attend to some very urgent matters, so I was away on official assignments.
You're welcome back.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. We'll kick off on the Daily Independent. Presidency replies Obasanjo says he lacks leadership qualities, presided over Nigeria's most fraudulent election. I am Tinubu's official spokesman, says Boala, vows not to give energy to critics over his appointment. G20 leaders inaugurate global alliance to end hunger. And also proposed tax bill not targeted at any region, says Uyedili. We can also find the federal government to stop varsity from producing graduates without technical skills. Wonder how they will do that. I think these are the big ones that we can take because of time. Quickly on the Punch newspapers.
All right, on the Punch newspaper this morning, let's see the big story there. Says corruption allegations. Presidency attacks OBJ as opposition backs ex-president. Federal government says Obasanjo lacks moral grounds to attack Tinubu. Opposition insists ex-leader right on corruption, bad governance. Ondo poll, Aiyedatiwa gets certificate of return Wednesday amid protest. Trump plans to use military for mass deportation. Planned takeover Makinde Adeleke knock Ganduje over threat. Federal government plans fresh 31 trillion naira borrowing. Luggage delay to attract $170, 10,000 naira fine, says NCAA. Okay. Default, 34 states, FCT shown 263 billion naira UBEC grants. And the final story, Senate invites top doctors over strike. That's all on the front page of the Punch. Let's move over to the next paper.
All right, quickly on this Nigeria this morning, it says you left Nigeria worse off in terms of corruption, economic woes, and others. Okay. NERC orders discos to replace obsolete meters free of charge. Senate begins probe of 105 billion naira financial infractions by federal agencies. And finally, construction of houses for judges by FCTA in order, says Daudu SAN. All right, I think we could quickly just go straight to the major one, which is the criticism of the former President Olusegun Obasanjo's government by the current administration, mostly by Funso Doherty, who is one of the special advisors.
You know, I think the spokespersons of this government, they think that the only way or the best way to deflect any kind of criticism, no matter how constructive, is to hurl insults at anybody who says anything about the glaring incompetence of the Bola Tinubu presidency. And you know, it's funny. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo went to Yale University in honor of the Achebe lecture series and criticized the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And there was no point raised by Obasanjo in that speech that anybody can controvert. None. None. Tinubu has run this economy so badly that anybody who is saying that things... Look, the simple question to ask, are you better off today than you were 18, 19 months ago? And I'm not too sure, except perhaps not those that are cocooned in Asorok that can say, yes, that they are better off today than they were before May 29, 2023. So all the things Obasanjo said are true. Now, Sunday Dare Bayo Onanoga, of course, went off tangent to do what they know how best to do, which is to leave the message and attack the messenger. And in doing this, they don't even engage. You could say, look at the things the man said without insulting him, without calling him names. Now, they are succeeded in calling him names, but they did not address any of the issues that Obasanjo raised. Like Obasanjo, hate Obasanjo, you can't compare. Even if we say in 2 years, what Obasanjo achieved between 1999 and 2001, and what Bola Tinubu has achieved between May 2023 and November 2024. Now, what are the issues? Obasanjo made an economy that was growing well below 1% or less than 2%. But in the first year, Obasanjo has grown this economy to about 5%. Going forward, Obasanjo grew the economy to double digits. And by the time Obasanjo left the presidency, he has not only paid off all Nigeria's debt, we had a foreign reserve that was near $40 billion. Yeah. What has Tinubu done with his own 18 months? In fact, Obasanjo's government created a middle class. People were able to now buy cars from their salary. Dollar exchange rate, I'm not too sure, it was more than 15 naira to a dollar, all through the presidency of Obasanjo. So what has Tinubu done? Exchange rate grew from about 500 naira to a dollar. Today it is nearing 1,800 naira to a dollar. petrol price has increased from below 200 naira to, if you go to some places, they are buying as much as 1,500 naira. So what are we talking about? Nigeria has effectively become, even if you say that they became poverty capital before Tinubu came on board, the truth of the matter is that nobody has been lifted off poverty in the last 18, 19 months. If anything, it has got worse. So when these guys come to gaslight anybody who says, look, we are not doing well, and these and these and these are the things you ought to do. When it comes to politics and elections, I agree that Obasanjo did not do well. In fact, part of the problem we are suffering today is the legacy Obasanjo left in terms of elections. If Obasanjo had handled the transition well and allowed even party primaries to be free and fair even before we got to general election, we may not have had a Yar'Adua. Because if you remember, Yar'Adua had just finished his 2-term governorship of Katsina State and was prepared to go back to Ahmadu Bello University to lecture. He had no intention whatsoever of coming for the presidency. It was Obasanjo who went and pulled him out. And if we did not have a Yar'Adua, we wouldn't have had a Jonathan.
All right. Just hold that thought, it's okay. I want us to bring in Judy, who's calling up from Abuja. Good morning, Judy.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi guys, good morning. I just wanted to contribute to the show. And one of the things that I felt that isn't really talked about enough following the election of 2023 is that the former president talked about the urgency of reforming our electoral processes.
Yeah, Trudy, we're struggling to hear you. We can't seem to hear you. The line seems very muffled. Can you maybe try to speak a little louder and clearer? We're all struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Better. Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right, okay. So sorry about that. So I said that one of the things that the former president said, that I'm not seeing that urgency, not from the political parties, the opposition, not from Nigerians in general, is the urgency to reform INEC, our electoral processes. He said it, that the 2023 election was a travesty. Everyone saw what happened in 2023. But the urgency is not even, laid in the hearts of people that we need to do something about, INEC and the electoral processes. And we're gradually turning into 2027. Everybody's just, acting as everything is normal. Nothing is normal about INEC. Nothing is normal about electoral processes. Why aren't, the opposition parties, clamoring for, something as simple as the beavers and IREF to be made sacrosanct in our electoral process, so that nobody comes tomorrow and tell the country of over 230 million people, if I'm using, the recent focus, that there was a glitch, and because of that, a key part of the electoral process was, truncated in the middle of the election. The urgency is not there. So the thing I don't understand is, if someone takes something, the onus is on you coming out to rebut the thing, to come with evidence, preponderant evidence. Say, what the president has said is not right, and I'm giving you stats, data, prove your point, move away from insults. But honestly, I really don't understand what is happening in this country. Someone says something, and then other people are just insulting. Come with your facts. I'm really upset because 2027 is upon us, and nobody's doing anything.
Thank you so much.
The urgency is now. As a matter of fact, it was yesterday. Yeah. So why aren't we doing something about it?
Judy, thank you so much. Sorry, we had to interject so that we can, because we have a very limited time. But I think Judy has highlighted very important points. They're talking about no sense of urgency, looking at what happened in 2023, implementation of beavers as a mandatory part of our electoral process, because if we're going to 2027 again, we're going to see a repeat of what happened in 2023. And we're seeing it already in the off-cycle elections.
No sense of urgency, because what happened in 2023 was deliberate. It wasn't an accident. And that exactly is what they intend to do again in 2027. So nobody's going to reform anything. Don't forget, in 2019, there was a bill, Electoral Reform Act, that was passed by the National Assembly. President Muhammadu Buhari refused to sign it into law until after the election. So if anybody is expecting that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is on his own going to reform the electoral process, it is a lie, because they want to leverage this fraudulent electoral process to remain in power in 2027. So the sense of urgency cannot be there and will not be there because it is a deliberate thing. Yeah. So the truth of the matter is that we have no democracy. This is not a democracy, because if I have said it repeatedly here, that if democracy, as defined by Lincoln, is government of the people, by the people, for the people, the most important element in the democratic value chain is that the people must decide who governs them. In Nigeria, the people don't. Yeah. People win elections by their whims and caprices, not by the express mandate given by the people. Look at what transpired in the US about 2 weeks ago. Donald Trump, like him or hate him, is going to be sworn in president January 20th because the people, Americans, say this is the man we want. Elections have consequences. So if in the next 4 years, the man proves to be what a lot of people globally think that he is, Americans will have themselves to blame because the man told them what he wanted to do and they voted for him based on what he promised them that he was going to do. In Nigeria, you cannot say that. With the 2023 election, unless anybody who wants to continue lying to himself, yeah, is not.
Just also to remind, those speaking for the current administration are still mentioning, the electoral issues of the Obasanjo, era. They've had 9 years to fix it. They've had 9 years to create whatever type of institutional reforms in our electoral process, that are needed. But if after 9 years in 2024, we still see what happened in Ondo State, we still have seen what happened in Edo State, we still have INEC with its lowest level of trust from the Nigerian people, then it's not Obasanjo's fault.
They are hypocrites. The people there now are not Democrats. They have never believed in free and fair election. Okay, even if we agree, as I was saying earlier, that Obasanjo messed up the electoral process in 2007, what did Bola Tinubu do in Lagos? Since 1999, when he came on board in Lagos, there has never been any free and fair election in Lagos. APC has done worse in terms of mismanaging our electoral process than even Obasanjo did in 2007. Nigerians believe. And go and look at the records. Yep. The 2023 election, there are more than 1,000 petitions in the law courts arising from that election. Election petitions came down after the Jega election of 2015, came down to about 500 or lower. Today, every election conducted by Mahmoud Yakubu is ending up in the courts. It is the courts that are determining who won and who lost elections in Nigeria. So even the much Obasanjo did to damage our electoral process, starting from when he said that the election in 2007 was a do or die affair, APC has done worse. APC has done worse. So you can't go back and continue blaming when you have not done anything to reform. In fact, Tinubu's brand of politics, identity politics, has now taken it to the level that you are told if you are not going to vote for our political party, or if you are from so and so place, don't even come out of your house on election day. That is where we are now.
Yeah. All right. Oh,
okay. I mean, there's so many stories to look at. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I was hoping we could touch on the airline imposing sanctions, and what that will mean for delayed luggages. I think it's an exciting update, but we don't have time to look into that. Mr. Mechi, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Always my pleasure.
Okay, we'll go on a very quick break now. When we come back, we'll be heading into our next top story. Stay with us. Welcome back. The fastest growing company in Africa, as recognized by the Financial Times in 2024, Omni Retail, has just launched its 50th distribution franchise network, Omni Hub, in Lagos, Nigeria. Today, we're thrilled to have two key representatives from Omni Hub, Omni Retail's franchise network that empowers entrepreneurs to establish FMCG distribution businesses. Joining us this morning is Priya Amanani, Business and Product Operations Head, and we also have Dika Oha, the Chief Innovative Officer for Omni Retail. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
All right, so I think we'll begin with you, Priya. Omni Retail, Omni Hub, what exactly is Omni Retail? What do you do, and how are the hubs, improving the FMCG sector in Nigeria?
All right. So Omni Retail is a tech platform that helps retailers to get access to goods. And how Omni Hub helps in that space is Omni Hubs are franchise owners who serve as our distribution network to help us enable get these FMCG goods to the retailers within the markets. Yes.
I mean, talk also about how this, model benefits Omni Hub and, the franchise owners as well.
Right. So the way it works is for anyone who has, let me put it in simpler terms, someone who has a 200 square meter or any space around that around that space, and who has enough working capital can invest into our franchise network and serve as a distributor for getting access to goods to retailers.
Okay, let's bring Dika in. You've explained exactly what who qualify to be a part of this. What is in it for them? What is the return for them? What can they expect back?
Okay, so we see Omni Hub as a win-win opportunity, and we'll start with Omni Retail. For Omni Retail, we're creating a platform that multiple players can benefit from, and some of the players are franchisee. As a franchisee, you get to connect into a platform that already has huge demand, and so you have like a market, and you're not having to develop that opportunity from scratch. For Omni Retail itself, we're not having to invest and build out an infrastructure from the ground up. We're able to leverage and partner with franchisees. Manufacturers are able to move their goods very close to the retailers at no new distribution cost, because distribution is an extra cost. And the retailer gets to access these products at the best prices, close to them at their neighborhoods. And some of the key benefits here is that as a franchisee, you're able to earn $1+ million monthly if you execute this properly in your neighborhood. And the entry cost for this is pretty low. It's just a $5 million bank guarantee you probably need to make. And you get credit from manufacturers, 30 days credit. And so you actually don't have to fully invest in the working capital that you use to do this. The manufacturers will provide most of the working capital, and you make over $1 million every month by getting into this network.
So you invest 5 million naira, and then you're guaranteed to make over $1 million every
monthly,
month?
Yes.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Okay. Sounds interesting. There's definitely other franchise models in Lagos and across Nigeria. What other things make Omni Hub different? Why should
possible or Nigerians, decide to choose Omni Hub?
Okay, so this particular, FMCG is a fast-moving, from the name, fast-moving consumer goods. So it's fast-moving, it's always trading, it's anti any kind of thing that happens to the economy. It's resilient to like economic problems, macroeconomic problems and challenges. And so anyone playing in this space, especially anyone coming in and connecting into a thriving business like Omni Retail, into our network, the big benefit and value is that you would always make money, you would always generate business. There's always an opportunity for you to constantly generate revenue for you, your community, create jobs for people in your community, and kind of contributing to the economy. We know that trade and retail is the bedrock of the economy, and so like, this is really compelling, and we're really excited about this.
All right, Priya, let's talk about viewers who are maybe interested in the opportunities that Omni Hub offers. How can they access more information? And also, are you also interested in viewers that have unused storage space, and how can they be a part of this?
Right. So I'll start by highlighting two other things. So if you speak about, there are a lot of distributors in the market today as well. The power that Omni Retail brings to you is we have the connections with the manufacturers, and we're able to help you start up at a low cost, be able to procure the goods at a lower cost in comparison to other distributors into the market. The second bit is with franchises, often you get a space and then the mother company helps you with some level of marketing, but you're still hunting for your customers. Here, what we do for our partners is also we help them to generate orders. So we go into our retail network and collect orders, which we then pass on to our franchise owners. So our franchise owners, if you have a 200 to 250 square meter space or something larger than that, you have some level of working capital, like Dika said, you have 5 million naira, let's say, to begin with. That's about all you need to get started. We'll help you to procure, we'll help you to sell, and make sure that goods are rotating at a great speed. For anyone who wants to reach out, I'll put out the number as well as the website. The phone number is 0916-998-4386, and our website is omnihub.africa. That's omnihub.africa.
Okay.
For anyone who's interested.
I also want to know what the target is. What is the goal for Omni Hub here in Nigeria and across the continent?
Right. So for us, the vision has always been getting access to essential goods in the most remote of areas, right?
Yeah.
And ensuring that they're not just available, but they are consistently available. So for us, the franchise network is a method of ensuring that the most basic food items, the most basic sanitary items are available to any and everyone out there, irrespective of the most remote of locations.
Okay.
And just to add, we have a goal of 250 by 2025. We're at 50 locations now, and we have a goal of 250 more to get to 300.
Okay, that's a very pretty ambitious goal, and I hope that Omni Retail and Omni Hub, you're able to achieve these targets, and that if anyone is interested in being a part of this, or leveraging the opportunities that Omni Hub and Omni Retail provides, that you reach out to the numbers that have been called and visit their website. And I mean, if you're in doubt, you can also reach out to us, and we'll definitely help with making the connections. So I think on a final note, for people who have probably been in this space, and are sort of trying to find it. So I think the question would be, your target audience, would you say it's more of people that are trying or have been in this business, or would you say you're more targeted at those who are trying to come into into this space?
I think what we're looking for is people with an entrepreneurial spirit and mindset. That's what matters more. If you have a skin in the game, and if you are someone who likes to go the extra mile to get things done, that's the number one thing. And then second, of course, is having a space where we can, work out of.
Yeah.
And to be fair, just to add, you don't have to have experience in FMCG. We'll tool you up with technology. We're a tech company first. We'll train you in depth. You know the processes. You know how to do this by yourself. in a very short time. You'd have complete support from the Omni retail team. These are some of the best, greatest minds on the continent. So you will not struggle to execute this. You'd be able to do it with a lot of ease. As long as you have the hunger, as Priya said, you'd be able to do this.
Can we both decide now that we want to have that in addition to our own careers, our careers on TV?
We can sign you up now.
Surely, yes.
Really? Okay.
Okay. I mean, but I think before we go, let's also quickly once again, let people know where you can be found, either online or your offices or your numbers.
Right. So I'll repeat the phone number and the website once again. So it's 0916-998-4386, and the website is omnihub.africa, omnihub.africa. And we have our offices across multiple locations, but I would say we're present in Ijora as well.
All right.
So
Ijora?
yes.
You pronounce it well.
I'm half Nigerian, so.
Oh, brilliant. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Priya Amamani, the Chief of Staff, Omni Retail, and Dika Oha, Chief Innovation Officer, Omni Retail. Thank you for joining us on the show. And all the best with Omni Retail, Omni Hub, and the target of 250 by 2025. Yes. We hope to have you back again to share with us your progress journey so far, and, to see that more people would have joined. Thank you.
Surely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
All right, this is still Breakfast Central. Thank you very much for staying tuned. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, we'll be probably wrapping things up, but stick around.
Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu has redesignated the positions of two recently appointed officials in the State House Media and Communications team to enhance efficiency within the government's communication machinery. The restructuring will now see Mr. Sunday Dare, hitherto the Special Advisor on Public Communication and National Orientation, now acting as a Special Advisor on Media and Public Communications. Mr. Daniel Bwala, announced last week as Special Advisor Media and Public Communication, is now the Special Advisor Policy Communication. These appointments, along with the existing role of Special Advisor Information and Strategy, underscore that there is no single individual for the presidency. Instead, all three special advisors will collectively serve as spokespersons for the government.
Meanwhile, the most shocking turn of events that saw former spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar, Daniel Bwala, become a spokesperson for the president has generated comments and surprises. He decided to speak to the media yesterday, and this is what he had to say when asked about his sudden change and turn around to join the APC.
So my appreciation is to the president as a man of courage who has considered me worthy to appoint me as his spokesman, special advisor on media and public communication, and will ensure that in communicating on behalf of the president to the Nigerian people, we do our best in the discharge of our function. The president has, all of us as servants and aides to the president. Section 5 of the Constitution vests the executive powers of the Federation in the president, and he carries out this duty, if you look at Section 5, either by himself, through the vice president, or the ministers of the government or the Federation or agencies. So the president is the team leader. Every other person functions.
Well, I guess it's, congratulations to Daniel Bwala. I mean, in my opinion, and I've seen, many people also react to it, so I don't know, if there's anything that is of relevance with these appointments, because it doesn't really change the mode of communication or change the attitude towards communication to the Nigerian people. What Nigerians want is a president that is regularly interactive with the people, not speaking through spokespersons. The previous administrations, the PDP governments that they, regularly criticize and insult, had regular media chats. The Obasanjo government had, Goodluck Jonathan had pretty much the same thing. I believe Yar'Adua also had the same thing, regular media chats. So they can speak to the people, they can explain their policies, they can talk about their plans, they can ask, answer questions from journalists. We've not seen that, since 2015. President Buhari barely spoke to the media. Pretty much the same thing is happening with the current administration. President Tinubu is barely having, if not even barely, has having zero interactions with the media. And so you know, I don't know that Nigerians necessarily care about who's been appointed, you know, as a special advisor on media and communications and orientation and whatnot. It doesn't really matter. A lot of Nigerians do not care. And of course, the general picture as well is, just seeing how, to many people, Nigeria is a big pot of stew. They really are just looking for ways to plug themselves into whatever part of the pot of stew that they can jump into and take a piece of meat. Nothing else matters. Join us tomorrow to, of course, have another very interesting episode of Breakfast Central. For now, it is goodbye. Happy International Men's Day once again. I am Osao Gie Ogbon. I'll see you tomorrow.
And again, happy International Men's Day to all the men here, our men here in News Central, as well as around the world. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Olive Emodi.